Good evening, live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, coming up in the next 30 minutes. Multiple electoral battles in the US, early tests for Trump's agenda. In New York, mayoral showdown. Democrat Zohran Mamdani takes on former Governor Andrew Cuomo. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar holds talks with Israel Foreign Minister Gideon Saar in New Delhi, reiterates India's support to Gaza peace plan. Typhoon Kalmaegi batters Philippines, at least 39 dead, thousands evacuated, Vietnam braces for landfall. Voters in New York, New Jersey and Virginia are heading to the polls, choosing their next governors and mayors, a crucial early test of how Americans are responding to President Donald Trump's turbulent first 9 months in office. In New York City, a high-profile mayoral showdown. Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani is taking on former Governor Andrew Cuomo, who's running as an independent. Democrat candidate Zohran Mamdani casted his vote in New York. Meanwhile, in California, voters decide whether to hand Democratic lawmakers control over congressional redistricting, escalating the fight for power in the U.S. House ahead of next year's midterms. More than 3 million people voted early in Virginia, New York and New Jersey, in each case for exceeding the totals from 4 years ago. In New York City, there were 735,000 ballots cast, which was more than 4 times the number in 2021. Meanwhile, U.S. federal government shutdown reached its 35th day, tying the record for the longest shutdown in American history. Over the past 30 days, the Democratic and Republican parties have remained deadlocked, and none of the 13 votes in the Senate have passed the temporary funding bill proposed by the Republicans. Trump administration has decided to send only partial food payments to 42 million low-income Americans. The U.S. Department of Agriculture told a federal court it will tap into contingency fund to allow states to issue partial November benefits under Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Democrats and Republican leaders pointed fingers at each other, with no end in sight to the standoff between Republicans and Democrats in the Congress. Democrats have blocked spending legislation in the Republican-controlled Congress, saying that any funding package must also expand COVID pandemic-era healthcare subsidies due to expire at the end of December. Republicans say that the issue should be dealt with separately. U.S. officials delayed a new round of flights as airlines said 3.2 million air passengers have been hit by delays or cancelled flights due to a spike in air traffic controller absences amid government shutdown. Officials say there were ground delays at the airport in Dallas and Austin due to air traffic controller shortages. Nearly 2,900 flights have been delayed on Monday, and further delays could be issued for Houston and Washington airports. The shutdown has forced 13,000 air traffic controllers and 50,000 transportation security admin officers to work without pay and snarled thousands of flights. In other news, in a pre-budget speech on Tuesday, British Finance Minister Rachel Reeves said she would do what is necessary to protect the country against high inflation and high interest rates as she weighs whether to increase taxes in the 26 November budget. Citing uncertainty over tariffs and stubbornly high inflation amongst other challenges, Minister Reeves said that her annual fiscal update would be for her growth with fairness at its heart and a budget that supports businesses to create jobs and innovate.
My budget, led by this government's values of fairness and opportunity, and focused entirely on the priorities of the British people. protecting our NHS, reducing our national debt, and improving the cost of living. The continual threat of tariffs has dragged on global confidence, deterring business investment and dampening growth. Inflation has been too slow to come down, as supply chains continue to be volatile, meaning the costs of everyday essentials remain too high. And the cost of government borrowing has increased around the world, a shift that Britain, with our high levels of debt left by the previous government, has been particularly exposed to.
Nigerian Foreign Minister Yusuf Tugar said on Tuesday that state involvement in religious persecution was impossible in Nigeria under the country's laws and constitution. He was responding to a question about US President Trump's warning of possible fast military action in Nigeria if it fails to crack down on the killings of Christians in the country.
What we've done is we've articulated what our constitution says about religious freedom, what our federal laws say about religious freedom. Nigeria's constitutional commitment to religious freedom and rule of law. All the answers are in there. And this is what guides us. And this is what shows that it's impossible for there to be a religious persecution that can be supported in any way, shape, or form by the government of Nigeria at any level.
Moving on, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said the European Commission's latest report on Ukraine's reform progress showed Kiev was confidently moving towards EU membership. Meanwhile, European Enlargement Commissioner Marta Kos said European Union enlargement is a realistic possibility in the coming years, and Montenegro is the most advanced candidate to join the bloc.
Given the pace of some candidate countries, successful enlargement, and this is really my date today, is a realistic possibility within the coming years. Our candidates have ambitious goals. Montenegro wants to finish negotiations at the end of 26, Albania at the end of 27, Moldova and Ukraine in 2028. Amid the challenges caused by Russia's war of aggression, Ukraine has demonstrated its commitments to its EU path, moving forward on key reforms. Steps already taken are laying the foundations for recovery and opening space for greater private sector involvement. It will be essential to sustain this momentum and prevent any risk of backsliding, in particular anti-corruption.
Germany is planning to increase its financial aid for Ukraine by about $3.5 billion by next year. Germany is Europe's largest contributor to military aid to Ukraine, having provided around 40 billion euros since Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022. In its 2026 budget, Germany had allocated 8.5 billion euros to Ukraine. European Union Environment Minister launched a last-ditch bid to pass a new climate change target on Tuesday. French Environment Minister warned that if not agreed on, EU targets would be a disaster.
We need to find a figure or a range that suits everyone, because don't forget that the NDC requires unanimity. And for me, the worst disaster would be if there were no NDC to present in Belém. That would be the disaster.
Ça, c'est le désastre.
In 2016, the Paris Agreement came into force, a defining moment in the world's collective journey to combat climate change. Today, India is one of the few major economies on track to meet its nationally determined contributions (NDC) under Paris Agreement. DD India's Taposh Bhattacharya brings us more.
On November 4, 2016, the Paris Agreement came into effect, marking a historic turning point in the global fight against climate change. The world came together with one shared goal: to limit global temperature rise and secure a sustainable future for all. It entered into force after 55 countries representing 55% of global emissions ratified the pact. Among those nations that rose to the challenge, India emerged as a key driver of climate action. Guided by the principles of climate justice and sustainable development, India has consistently turned words into results. The launch of the International Solar Alliance, co-founded by India and France, has become a shining example of collective action, bringing together over 100 nations under one solar vision. One sun, one world, one grid. India's initiatives in biofuels, electric mobility, green hydrogen and afforestation reflect its comprehensive approach to sustainability. Under its nationally determined contributions, India is on track to reduce the emissions intensity of its GDP by 45% by 2030 and achieve net zero by 2070. The country has already installed over 180 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity, including solar, wind, biomass, and small hydro projects, and is steadily moving toward its target of 500 gigawatt of non-fossil fuel-based energy capacity by 2030. India's ambitious initiatives such as the National Solar Mission, Wind Energy Mission, and the Green Energy Corridor have accelerated the pace of change, while policy reforms and public-private partnerships have strengthened the renewable ecosystem. As the world prepares for COP30 in Brazil, India stands tall as a voice of the Global South, leading by example. Tapas Bhattacharya's report for DD India.
India's clean industrial future is gaining momentum. Industrial Transition Accelerator, launched at COP28, has unveiled its India Insights Briefing and Project Support Program to drive low-carbon growth across key sectors like steel, cement and aviation. Developed with Boston Consulting Group, the report highlights 65 commercial-scale projects worth over $150 billion, capable of cutting up to 175 million tons of carbon dioxide and creating over 2 lakh jobs.
India is on the cusp. We are moving towards net zero. Our commitment to NDCs are there. But what is the role that the industries are playing right now, especially in aligning with the government's vision?
India has 65 such projects on the drawing board, and our goal, our job, is to work with all the stakeholders domestically and internationally to get those projects from the drawing board to final investment decision, the point at which they can start to be constructed and later go into production.
Now you mentioned steel industry. These are the industries which are now working, especially when it comes to green hydrogen, getting that supply chain working. Is that something that you guys are working with the stakeholders to not just to get the technology, but also get the finance? Climate finance is also something that a lot of people are talking about.
Absolutely. The way we work is working in partnership with the stakeholders in the country, both in the industrial sectors, project developers, but also all the relevant ministries and policymakers to find the right combination of factors that will unlock these investments. And let's remember, India has a real competitive commercial advantage. You mentioned hydrogen. Because of its blessed resources in solar energy, it has one of the lowest levelized costs of electricity globally. That means it can also produce green hydrogen at a very competitive cost internationally. That allows industries here in India to decarbonize over time, but not only for domestic consumption. I think the real opportunity here as well is for India to take its place in international markets.
The COP30 is going to kickstart a short while from now, and a lot of people are now talking, well, is there any chance that the developed countries, West especially, are they coming down when it comes to their commitment?
So what we see from our data, and we have a global project tracker, and we've just updated it to show that there are now globally over 1,000 projects, deep decarbonization, commercial scale projects around the world. Yes, there are some headwinds, it's true, but we also see that many of these green production methods are becoming increasingly cost competitive with their fossil fuel equivalent production methods. We see that momentum growing, and last year there were more of these projects reaching final investment decision globally than in previous years. So the momentum is continuing and growing.
With Car Person Piyush, this is Tapas Bhattacharya for DD India from Delhi.
And still to come on this edition of DD India Live. Gita Mahotsav caps off week-long Pravasi Parichay in Riyadh. Indian all-rounder Ravi Chandran Ashwin ruled out of the upcoming season of Australia's Big Bash League.
This week on Defense Dynamics, we decode Astra Mark II, why it is India's next generation air dominance weapon, what makes this missile a true game changer. We analyze the force multiplier in the sky, India's mid-air refueling aircraft and their critical role in sustaining air power. Finally, the infantry soldier gets a much-awaited close-quarter battle carbine, which is compact, precise and built for decisive close combat. We decode the Army Chief's words, preparing for the unknown. What does it reveal about India's evolving war-fighting mindset? Catch the sharpest analysis of strategy, firepower and future warfare this Wednesday at 8 p.m. IST only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar held a meeting with Israel Foreign Minister Gideon Saar in New Delhi on Tuesday. The leaders held productive discussions on strengthening strategic partnership across various domains between the two nations. Minister Jaishankar reaffirmed India's zero tolerance towards terrorism in all its forms and manifestations.
India and Israel have a strategic partnership, and particularly in our case, the term has a real meaning. We have stood together in testing times, and we have created a relationship with a very high degree of trust and of reliability. Our two nations face a particular challenge from terrorism. It is essential that we work towards ensuring a global approach of zero tolerance towards terrorism in all its forms and manifestations.
In the meeting, Dr. Jaishankar said that India supports the Gaza peace plan.
We welcome the return of the hostages and the remains of those who unfortunately lost their lives. India supports the Gaza peace plan and hopes that it paves the way for a durable and lasting solution.
Meanwhile, Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Saar expressed interest in building a long-lasting strategic partnership between India and Israel.
I believe that India is the future. I told you that. India is the world's largest democracy and the fastest growing economy. India is a global superpower. Israel is a regional powerhouse. Our nations already shares a warm friendship. Our goal is to build a long-term strategic partnership between Israel and India.
Both ministers witnessed exchange of MOU on training between India and Israel's foreign services. On November 3rd, in a major boost to R&D ecosystem in the country, Prime Minister launched the 1 lakh crore rupees Research, Development and Innovation Scheme Fund. The scheme aims to promote a private sector-driven research and development ecosystem in the country. DD India correspondent Akshay Dongre filed this report from Emerging Science, Technology and Innovation Conclave 2025, which is being held in New Delhi from 3rd to 5th of November.
We are at the Emerging Science and Technology and Innovation Conclave 2025 at Bharat Mandapam in New Delhi. Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated the ESTEC 2025 and has also announced a major fund of about 1 lakh crore rupees for future of science and technology, emerging technologies, startups and all other areas where research is required. At ESTEC 2025, a lot of startups, a lot of universities, academicians, scientists from not just India but all across the world have gathered to see this momentous occasion, as well as this hub where researchers have gathered. They are interacting with startup owners. Startup owners are then talking to academicians, and the entire infrastructure is present here in New Delhi right now.
And industry experts have hailed the launch of Rs 1 lakh crore fund during the ongoing development, Emerging Science, Technology and Innovation Conclave 2025.
Time that it's been open to the private industry, and I think he has that vision. He seems to be a very serious person, and he's serious about actually bringing in the change that should have been brought about many years ago. Right. And we are immensely grateful, not just as a company, me as an individual, we as scientists, innovators, students, academicians. We're very, very proud of the work that he's done and happy for bringing us this relief of sorts, giving us pathways, making avenues so that we as a nation can progress.
In Philippines, at least 39 people have been killed as Typhoon Kalmaegi hit the central region on Tuesday. Torrential rain, strong winds, storm surges forced thousands to evacuate from their homes in several towns. Philippine Red Cross helped the residents being rescued in Cebu City. The typhoon made landfall early with sustained winds of 150 kilometers per hour, damaging towns on the island of Cebu. Homes and cars have been inundated and Trans Central Highway remained shut due to landslides and fallen trees. The typhoon is forecast to make a landfall on Thursday night or early hours of Friday morning in Vietnam's central regions. The government has said that it was preparing for the worst case scenario. Amid threat of the typhoon, death toll from a week of flooding and record rains in central Vietnam rose to 40 on Tuesday. Let's now turn to other stories making news around the world. More than 1.3 million people have been displaced by gang violence in Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince. Many have sought refuge in churches, schools now converted into makeshift shelters as humanitarian crisis continues to worsen with no end in sight. French writer Laurent Mauvignier won the Goncourt Prize, France's most prestigious literary award, for La Maison Vide, a sweeping 750-page family saga on Tuesday. The 58-year-old author was awarded the prize in the first round of voting ahead of a Belgian writer. Iranians gathered in Tehran on Tuesday to commemorate the 46th anniversary of the takeover of the US embassy. The crisis, which became a pivotal moment in Iran's 1979 Islamic Revolution, resulted in the severance of diplomatic relations with Washington and ushered in decades of hostility between the two nations. The Embassy of India in Riyadh concluded the third edition of Prasar Bharati 2025 after a week-long celebration of Indian culture. The festival, which was running since October 28th, ended with a grand presentation of Gita Mahotsav, a musical. The musical drama performed by the students of Vaidehi Nritya Vidyalayam, Riyadh, brought the message of Bhagavad Gita to life through music and dance. Throughout the week, India's diverse cultural heritage was showcased, featuring performing arts and culinary traditions. Launched in 2023, the Prasar Bharati series is a partnership between the Embassy and Indian Diaspora Associations in Saudi Arabia to showcase Indian culture. In sports, former Indian cricketer Ravichandran Ashwin's much-anticipated foray into Australian Big Bash League has been stalled by a knee injury, with the off-spinner ruled out for the entire season with Sydney Thunder. Ashwin suffered the injury while training in Chennai as preparations for the tournament. He's undergone a procedure due to which he won't be able to participate in the tournament, which is set to begin on December 14th later this year. 39-year-old was set to play for Sydney Thunder in what was expected to be his maiden BBL stint. Indian Premier League side Lucknow Super Giants on Tuesday appointed former Australia all-rounder Tom Moody as their Global Director of Cricket for the upcoming season of the lucrative T20 League. The 60-year-old Moody has had 2 coaching stints with Sunrisers Hyderabad. He left the franchise in 2022 when Brian Lara took over as the head coach. He will look after all the group's cricket teams, Lucknow Super Giants in the IPL, Durban Super Giants in SA20 and Manchester Originals in the 100. That's all for this edition of DD India Live. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. This app is available on both Android and iOS. Scan the QR code on the screen and download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live. Namaskar.